As Guyana sits on the economic and political crossroads, we speak to the nation's opinion leaders and decision makers to get their views on the challenges the country faces and the path it must take to achieve national development. Welcome to Nation Watch. Now here is your host Mervyn Williams, former member of the Guyana Parliament.
Hello and welcome to Nation Watch for today, Sunday, 17th September 2023. It's Indigenous Heritage Month, and as always, we want to extend best wishes to the Indigenous community of Guyana. Today we have a very special guest. Our guest today is Mr. Aubrey C. Norton, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the parliamentary opposition. Mr. Norton has agreed to chunk out 60 minutes of his busy schedule so that he can speak with us here on Nation Watch. We're on Watch for the Nation. Welcome, Mr. Norton, to Nation Watch.
Thanks for having me, Marvin, and let me take the opportunity to say Happy Indigenous Month to all the Indigenous peoples, and I hope that the activities in this month will contribute to your border development. And I also a good day to the entire Guyanese population.
Okay, so Mr. Aubrey Norton, leader of the opposition, is currently on official business overseas. Mr. Norton, you recently traveled to the US before heading back home to take care of business here, and now we're chatting with you while you are in Canada on another official visit. How do you rate the success of these international visits? How have those engagements been going? And how beneficial are these visits to the political life of Guyana moving forward?
These visits are critical. We have to recognize that there's a significant role for Guyanese in the diaspora. Both visits have been focused on engaging Guyanese in the diaspora. It's been focused on also raising funds for the party. It is focused on ensuring that we stay in contact with our support base wherever we are. We also met with others outside of our support base, but the major focus on this occasion was not to focus on the status quo in the United States, but to engage our members. I believe it has been successful. The Guyanese in the diaspora, for instance, have ensured that we have access to certain media overseas. Up to this morning, one of the persons in the United States that we have engaged and sending information to indicated that from this week here, they will be putting our information in their newspaper. And so in terms of us accessing the media in the United States and Canada, it has been successful. I've already here done 2 interviews with the media. I'm scheduled to do another one shortly, in which I will discuss the Guyana political situation and bring to the awareness of the people in Canada what the reality is in Guyana. You are aware that the government tries to sugarcoat everything, and when you listen to them, you don't hear about poverty, you don't hear about the high levels of unemployment, you don't hear about the high cost of living, and all of these issues we bring into the attention. More importantly, a lot of Guyanese are committed to come and work with us to ensure we return to government. Some of them have indicated the skills they have that can be useful when we are in government. And so I believe these engagements have been very successful. For instance, in some areas of the United States, some people who are not involved in supporting us and in politics in recent times have returned. And I think that is good for the PNCR, it is good for the UPN, it is good for the opposition generally.
Comment briefly on your newspaper interview with the Spanish newspaper outfit. Guyanese people are not aware that you have been reaching out globally. So if you can give us a little bit of an update.
Which one you were talking about? Because as
This,
far
this Ricardo, the gentleman who from the newspaper from Spain that you had spoken with a couple of weeks ago.
okay, well, I didn't even know it was out, but I was engaging. I had agreed to ensure that a proper view of Guyana is given. He did indicate to me that when it is going to be out, he would have let me know. But I didn't know it was out, but I know we discussed oil and gas. We discussed the fact that the resources from oil and gas were not meeting the people of Guyana. I also recall speaking to him about our plan for Guyana. And I recall him suggesting that we will stay in contact and that we will give the requisite attention when the request is made for us to speak to the international media. I know I spoke to a Reuters journalists, and so I anticipated some these would also in the news.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Norton. Let's discuss briefly the inequalities that continue to persist in this country. We have a national budget, a humongous budget, of which $387.8 billion, or half of the national budget, has been allocated for infrastructure. We know that there's a sinkhole start of some slippage of more than 40% of all of the expenditure on public infrastructure in this country. And we also know that of that $387.8 billion, $136.1 billion has been allocated specifically for roads and bridges. And here is where a lot of money is disappearing into public infrastructure. Well, public infrastructure money is disappearing. In the meantime, there is the out of control cost of living, where Guyanese citizens live on less than 1,000 Guyana dollars, less than $5 United States currency per day. What is really happening in this country when a small group of persons who style themselves contractors benefit from this magnitude of money while the majority of the population continue to live in poverty?
We have to go back. The first problem is that there is no infrastructure development plan. Like I said when I did my budget presentation, the government seems to just flick and hope that they land on their feet. Now, what has been happening is that there are a plethora of projects being done, but there is no link between many of them. Additionally, if you look at what has happened on the East Bank, the aim of the road which is now from Providence coming down, the intention was to take the pressure off of the East Bank and to help solve the traffic problem. What in essence happened is that you just throw part of the problem to the intersection of the East Bank, which is Providence to Mandela, and you still have the congestion on the East Bank Road itself. Now, the problem here is, again, the absence of planning. They must have known that if they do that and no proper outlets are made from Sheriff Street, etc. All they would have done is to clog up Sheriff Street. And now driving Sheriff Street is a nightmare. So we have two nightmares. The East Bank, which was a result of bad planning on the party, because I saw sometimes Jack they were talking nonsense. It is they who created a scheme with one entrance in, one entrance out, and created the problems on the East Bank. First thing. The second thing, now there are attempts to remove it. That is also generating problems. I say this to say to you that it is not part of a structured program. If you look in Prashad Nagar, they are widening roads. But all of these widening roads come back into a narrow road, which doesn't make sense to me. And it suggests there isn't planning. Side by side with that, they are narrowing the drain. When flooding is a problem in Georgetown, they're not focusing on efficient drainage system. So apart from the fact that there is no infrastructure development plan and an unwillingness to adapt that which existed, because since in Forbes Burnham time there's a plan for a road to run from Suicide way up the East Coast, and then you would have put cut off roads to various villages, so that those persons coming from Temeri, etc., that didn't have to go into Georgetown would have been able to use those roads and cut off into villages. They didn't go with that. They go with a program here that is generating more problems than it solves. But the thing about the infrastructure program is the high level of corruption. I think the government opts for infrastructure because it allows for a lot of kickback and corruption. And so once you are allocating these contracts, and then you don't have an efficient procurement commission, they are stifling the procurement commission. They are finding all kind of rules. I know somebody who recently was not awarded a contract. They sent a request to the procurement commission, and the procurement commission basically found excuses rather than have a proper investigation done so that it can be determined why the person didn't get a contract. So there's a lot of corruption that is linked to these infrastructure development projects. And if you know the history of the PPP, they have always done that. We know of cases where they took people who know nothing about road construction and give them contracts. What that meant and the negative of it you're seeing, roads that are not properly done, roads that will have to be done again. And so it's a continuous flow of corruption rather than focusing on the development of Guyana. Additionally, in many of the PPP strongholds, they are doing over roads that have already been done in recent times. And then in many of the African Guyanese community, they continue not to do the roads. I know, for instance, they want to focus on Linden, New Amsterdam, and Georgetown because they believe they have to win those to win the national elections. We know that our base is strong and they won't be able to win it. And we know why they're going after it, and our people are there, and we would hope that they do proper roads. We know that the spin-off is corruption. We know that it is not an genuine interest in people in Linden, Georgetown, and New Amsterdam. It's another approach in which they hope to gain votes. And I will say to the people of Linden, New Amsterdam, Georgetown, you're entitled to those roads. You must demand that they are built properly, but you must be well aware that it is not your interest they are pursuing. They are attempting to appear to be a good government so that they can get votes.
Would would you say that the People's Progressive Party's corruption agenda is deliberately laid out? Let me give you the background. The infrastructure budget 2023 is 50% greater than 2022. And according to the numbers from our team here, it's budget 2023's provision for public infrastructure is 271% greater than 2021's provisions. So with no increased capacity either to manage or to provide skilled labor, with no design, as you already pointed out, no strategic design for public infrastructure works. This massive increase in allocation seems to be deliberately targeting corruption.
It is, in fact, an avenue for corruption. The fact that there isn't a plan suggests that they're not serious about the development of Guyana. When you look at their approach to infrastructure, I just mentioned to you that they are taking people who know nothing about infrastructure. I mean, I've told of a case of a mechanic who the PDP just took and made a contractor and demand done with mechanics because he's making money at a rate that he doesn't mind. He told people he doesn't mind having to give the kickback to government officials. And so what you have is not an attempt to give us roads and quality roads. It's an attempt to enrich a few. It's an attempt to ensure that the government and its cronies can access the resources via corruption. I have said regularly, and I include Jack Dale and A. Finale in this, if they want to be honest and they want to say that there isn't corruption, let them take their assets and put those assets against their income over the years, including what loans they would have had, and you would see that corruption underpins the wealth that we are seeing amongst the PPP elite. But what is first is that some of it are being done with loans, which are going to be a burden on future generations, and they don't care. So it's a gravy train, for the want of a better phrase. What they have is a gravy train running so that they can get the soup and the gravy, enjoy themselves at the expense of the people of Guyana. I pointed out that a private contractor close to the people did a road of, I think, a mile long with so much, and it costs 13 million Guyana dollars. Don't quote me on the length, but a similar road by the PPP cost 31 million, nearly 3 times. And so you see the aim is corruption. The reason they are not putting proper procurement systems in place is because with proper procurement systems, you will have to produce a plan, you will have to do proper quantities, etc. But what the government does is just allocate the resources. I mean, the government itself had to turn and tell the contractor that was doing the road from East Coast Public Road to Lamaha Gardens to pick up the pace where we have to keep with the contract. Of course, when you know that somewhere along the line, they fell out with the PPP. And so they issuing warnings, or in the fight to divide the cake, they probably ended up on the wrong side of somebody in the PPP status quo. So the whole thing is really to focus on corruption rather than delivering services to the people. I saw recently the people of Kuru battling for a road when we are aware that in enterprise they did over roads that were already done and not yet destroyed. They did the same thing in Enmore. So the focus is not on the development of the people. There is no attempt to see where the critical problems are and put road development to deal with the critical problems. I note that they have just announced, I think it's a program for our boys town, which I anticipated because we know that when they did the road along Pontrange Dam, the focus was on the elites getting access to the properties in our boys town. During the local government election, we warned that that was their interest. And so as they move into all boys town, the only thing that is missing from the plan that they had, the plan was to win the local government election, take the mayorship of Georgetown, and then use the mayorship to be able to pressure the people of Albystown out of Albystown and to give the cronies prime property along that Pontrange Dam Road. Some of that has been, some of them effective. And so they're coming up now with new plans. I gather they're going to do some roads in Albystown. But we have been calling for them to do those roads in Albystown. We think they need to be done, but we are also aware that as they shift, they are not just shifting to help people in our support base. It is part of their political agenda.
We know.
Only recently, I am informed that they took away some lands from overseas African Guyanese who overseas based in the old area, lands that he legitimately got. And so you see in that their agenda is not an agenda to really facilitate and help our communities.
We know that the Albystown mission has to do with easy access to the Demerara River and oil and gas investors. But this will be a topic for another discussion. I want to get your views on the question of the growing inequalities and the discriminatory approach to these same capital projects. Attorney Nigel Hughes made an observation in Region 5 with a budgeted sum to construct 30 roads or repair, rehabilitate, whatever, 30 roads. And in disaggregating the 30 roads by village, he found that in Bushlot, which is a PPP strong support base, 23 of those roads will be in Bushlot, while a token one road each have been given to Number 30 Village, Lovely Lass. Number 28, Catherine's Lust. Number 22, Hope Town, Anvoact. So this brings us to this question of inequalities in the distribution of the resources of state and the discriminatory approach of the People's Progressive Party favoring one section of the population that they believe to be their core supporters. What message do you have for the 49% of Guyanese who supported the APNU AFC coalition going forward?
First, let me thank Nigel and the researchers, because I know we have some people who are doing research and putting together the data for putting the data together. All it does is manifest what we have been saying, that the focus is not on the development of people, it is on corruption, and it is based on discrimination. The discrimination you see is part and parcel of the PPP strategy to destroy African Guyanese community, stifle African Guyanese community. I saw Jerry Gavaya stupidly talking about the Portuguese being discriminated against, in total contradiction to the history and evolution of the Portuguese community here. So as they do those things, they are also using their propaganda machinery to make it look as if, another group is being discriminated against. Now, when we look at the work being done, clearly the focus is not to put or to do the roads in the villages that need the road to be done. It is more a focus on ensuring the PPP put resources in the hands of the contractors, and in the case of Bushlot, to do the roads to satisfy their support base. Their support base is reacting to the fact that they distributed a lot of money in the African Guyanese community, and they didn't get the votes that they were looking for. And so I think they are trying to, apart from the discrimination, they are trying to regain some amount of confidence of the people in places like Bushlot. But what Guyana needs is an approach in which there is a comprehensive plan for the development of highways, etc. General roads. In one of my budget presentation, I made it very clear that we need to be linking the regions, particularly the interior, by road, so that we open the interior, provide new lands for people in the interior and others, while at the same time seeking to deal with climate change by shifting the population inland. That kind of thinking doesn't come from the PPP. The PPP is hell-bent on being divisive, on creating avenues for corruption, and that is the context in which we must see how they deal with those areas. Before the local government elections, they were promising Belladrum, Hope Town, all of these areas, that they will do the roads in the areas. Now that they have lost in those villages, you see they're doing one road per year. And then to say to them, they're sending the signal to our support base, well, if you want all your roads done, turn PPP. That is the message they're trying to send. But of course, our support base, it is aware that under the PNU government, everybody will be treated equally. And so I think they will continue to support us. They will note the injustices. They will note the inequity. And then at the right time, I think they will join with others to vote the People's Progressive Party out. And may I say this to you, I think what they're doing in areas like Bushlot is also because the people in those areas recognize as well you can't eat roads. Infrastructure is important, but their economic existence in all of these areas, the PPP will always have one or two people that are getting the majority of the resources, but the wider society is not getting. Right now on the Essequibo Coast, the farmers, the rice farmers are complaining. So even though they believe that their infrastructural development will result in support, that core that is getting, I think, will stay with the people. But they are going to be those who are not benefited, who are facing the high cost of living, who have to deal with a high level of poverty. They will not be impressed by even the roads they do in their own communities. And the last local government showed that in large measure, people have been rejecting the People's Progressive Party.
Mr. Norton, I want to shift gears here a little bit. The appointment of the Chancellor of the Judiciary and the Chief Justice is an issue that's back on the front. Well, it's again on the front burner. Recently, at a press conference hosted by Mr. Ali, some elements of confusion seem to have emerged. Now, you had signaled both verbally and in writing to Mr. Ali your total agreement with the confirmation of the persons holding the offices of Acting Chancellor of the Judiciary and Acting Chief Justice. This thing has been in the Guyanese public for more than 17 years. The average Guyanese understands what is required here. But the gentleman occupying the highest office in the land seemed not to have an understanding of what's happening. He pointed out to the media that, look, I just appointed the Judicial Service Commission and I'm waiting on them to do their work and then we'll take it from there. Whereas the appointment of these two judicial officers requires not the work of the Judicial Service Commission, but agreement between the president and the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition has already signaled multiple times his agreement for the confirmation of these two officers. Why is Mr. Ali playing a game of football with the appointment of these very, very important judicial officers in this country? And what are the implications going forward?
Oh, sometimes I understand why Jack Dio doesn't want Irfan Ali to do press conferences. When a man could say that he's waiting the Judicial Service Commission, it either meaning that he hasn't read the Constitution or he's just deliberately misleading. Because the Judicial Service Commission has nothing to do with the appointment of the Chancellor and the Chief Justice. Now, in that press conference, he made what I consider to be a very stupid statement. That the leader, a very stupid statement.
Only one, sir?
No, but I want to deal with the one specifically.
Okay.
He said that the leader of the opposition why the leader of the opposition cannot pick up the phone and call him. Let me remind Irfan Ali. In the first place, when we started to engage in keeping with the Constitution, I wrote to Irfan Ali and I said to him as president, I am in agreement with the present acting chancellor and present acting chief justice being appointed to the positions. He very rudely, arrogantly responded by saying he will do it whenever he feels like doing, for the want of better words. He suggested that it is not the place of the opposition leader to suggest to him that it be done. Now, if you rebuff an overture by me as leader of the opposition, why do you think I would want to call you? I wouldn't. In my opinion, I have already reached out to this president and said to him, look, the Caribbean is calling for this. The legal people, the Guyanese people want the appointment. And then you say to me, in simple language, there's not your place. I do it when I like. Don't now come and tell people that I must meet out to you. He also lied by saying he engaged me 8 times. Absolute garbage. There was an exchange of letters between us. And essentially, we have a difference of what constitutes meaningful consultation. In all the cases, when you point out, particularly the last one, where I pointed out when he was going to appoint the Teacher Service Commission, that we had no problem with Dajidar because he had no known political links, but we had serious problems with the appointment of Mrs. Leela Ramsey because she is the wife of a former Attorney General, and she is the mother of a present minister. And we said that this is supposed to be an independent commission. And so we said we couldn't support her. Then there was the young lady from Linden, Joan Mounthouse. Well, I know her coming up as Joan Boston, who is a PPP activist. I'm not asking anybody. I'm telling you because I know she's a PPP activist. I know she was getting contracts from the PPP. How do you put on a commission that is supposed to be independent, a political activist, and expect that I will agree with it? And when we put the objections, he went ahead and appointed them. So it suggests that he doesn't believe in consultation. He believes in doing what he likes. Unfortunately for him, the case of the Chief Justice demands agreement. And he knows that he wouldn't get there. Now let us turn to the extant Chancellor acting and Chief Justice. There are those who believe that it is purely a question of race that caused them not to be appointed by this regime. There are others who believe that they're comfortable with Justice George, but they are not comfortable with Justice Cummings. There are those who believe that if they keep them acting, then there is no security of tenure, and therefore the independence is eroded. Any one of those is the wrong reason for not appointing the Chancellor and the Chief Justice. But by the nature of the People's Progressive Party, they are not interested in a democratic society. If you were interested in a democratic society, you would want independent commissions. But all the persons that are being appointed to the commissions are political operatives. The Police Service Commission, the person appointed, I think is heading men of mission or men on mission, whatever it is called. He has a family working directly with the president. So you cannot expect a police service commission that is independent. And there is evidence that that particular chairman lied about what is happening when he said that on the one time he didn't have the recommendations, and before you know it, he had the recommendations, and obviously they could not do.
And he studied them all.
All. And was so you are seeing them attempting to put in all the institutions that should be independent to foster democracy, they are eroding them by putting political hats and political appointees into the position. Now, let's assume a matter comes with some PNC teacher in Linden before the Teacher Service Commission. Do you expect a PPP activist to be independent? They wouldn't. And so this is not about democracy. All of this is part of the People's Progressive Party strategy to dominate and control all aspects of the life of the Guyanese society. This is what it is about. They are not even interested in a judiciary that is going to operate independently. They want to accuse the rape, didn't shout out that they should get rid of judges because the judge decision didn't suit them. And that is the nature of the People's Progressive Party. And that is why Guyana has to have a new government, because it is heading in the direction of dictatorship.
But Mr. Norton, there seemed to be some method in the madness here, because there seemed to be an objective from the side of the People's Progressive Party. In the case of the appointment of Mr. Hicken, a questionable appointment as acting commissioner of police, because of the need to avoid appointing Dr. Paul Williams to that office, Dr. Paul Williams being senior to Mr. Hicken. And there is this controversial extension of the office of Mr. Hicken's tenure as an officer of the Guyana Police Force, simply because Dr. Paul Williams will be due for retirement sometime next year. So it appears as though Mr. Hicken is being kept there just so that Mr. Williams can stay out. And there's a school of thought that suggests that, as you pointed out, the chancellor is not favorably looked upon by this administration. And so that school of thought suggests that the regime is awaiting her retirement or the attainment of a retirement age so that they can now, as Ali put it, put the Judicial Service Commission to work in terms of the appointment of judges, one of whom they prefer to accede to high office. Is this mere imaginings by persons who are commenting, or is there, in fact, this particular method to the madness of this regime to directly control, dominate, manipulate all levels of all offices across this land?
In my opinion, there is no madness here. This is an orchestrated plan to ensure that the PPP occupies all the space in Guyana, dominate and control the society. Hicken, for instance, and he can challenge this in a court, campaigns on behalf of the PPP. He was in Agricola campaigning for it. He was in East Randveld. It is alleged by some in East Randveld that he actually told them that if he gets his way, then the PPP gets its way at local government. Then they don't have to worry. The police will be on their side. I don't know what that means. But people in the community allege that they told him that. He told them that. Now, the case of Hicken is really a sad case. I believe that any political party will have people that they prefer. That's a given. But they also have got to operate in the interest of the operate within the Constitution. By the very criteria the PPP put out for a commissioner, Hicken doesn't qualify. I've said before, he's neither certified nor qualified. And so it should be evident to all that the intention is not to get a commissioner that is going to enforce law and ensure there's order. The purpose of Hicken's presence is, one, to implement the dictates or the diktats of the People's Progressive Party. Two, to ensure he blocks the way so that Paul Williams or any other professional, because there are also Indo-Guyanese professionals at the top there. And my understanding is that they want to avoid those who they think will operate as professional, and they are likely to go in the direction of one who will be a replica of Hicken. I don't want to call names, but we have seen in the People's Progressive Party's approach to commissioners, etc., that even if the person is Indo-Guyanese and that person doesn't subscribe to their authoritarianism, they ensure that that person does not become a commissioner. Now, we have filed a case in the court because we believe that the law makes it clear a serving commissioner can get an extension, but there is no mechanism for an acting commissioner to be extended. So as far as we are concerned, Hicken is a squatter. He is squatting in the position of commissioner acting. And the court will rule on this matter. And we believe that if the court rules based on law, then Hicken will go. But we also have got to be very, very careful with this government because it bribes all and sundry. Some will reject it, some won't. And it is unfortunate that bribery is not only in terms of economics, like you want the contract, etc. Bribery has now taken a new role in the political machinery. You're bribing people to sign for you to get a candidate. You're bribing people for them to go on your list. You're bribing people for them to vote for you. There is the completion of the PPP corrupting the political processes in Guyana. And that is one of the most dangerous developments in recent time. We are accustomed to PPP's corruption in the economic realm, but it is fastly moving in the direction of corrupting even political processes like local government. Who would believe that a government that exists in a country will stoop so low to be paying people to vote for them, to be forcing people to put on their T-shirt so that they can appear? You know, I remember when the local government election nomination day, I said to people, do not be carried away by what the people is doing. They're playing optical politics. They want to give the impression that they have large support in the African Guyanese community and that they had already won the elections. We pointed out to people that it's a political game they're playing. Even after that, they weren't satisfied with that. They spent billions of taxpayers' money seeking to bribe people to do projects so that they can get votes in local government. The outcome of it is Jagdeo shouting, first, we can win Linden, we can win New Amsterdam, we can win Georgetown. And then he pulls his tail between his legs and said, okay, we made inroads. That is the nature of the regime we're dealing with.
I want to shift a little bit here again, Mr. Norton. well, a particular section of the media has finally caught on to your position regarding um, benefits for the Guyanese population from the oil and gas sector. You have put out there uh, um, a people-centered approach to development. You have identified a minimum livable wage in the region of $150,000 per month. You have put out there a proposal that says um, that the minimum livable wage should not be subject to pay as you earn taxes, so that Guyanese people can get more disposable income um, to tide them through these difficult times of high unbearable cost of living. At a recent press conference, you spoke also about the Guyanese citizens benefiting um, from oil and gas at greater, at a better level, for want of a better expression. You had made these statements before, but it has caught the attention of a particular news outfit to the extent that it made the editorial. Expand, please, in the remaining minutes of this program, what is the opposition's position regarding the Guyanese society benefiting in a more significant way from the resources earned from oil and gas?
Let me say to you that critical to the Guyanese benefiting is how you allocate the resources of the state. We've seen the government focus on infrastructure with the sole aim of putting money in the hands of their cronies. Now, that wouldn't contribute to the development of our people. Yes, they will get some roads, etc., but the people themselves need to develop. Our first argument is that roads, bridges, those things don't develop a country. The starting point for the development of a country is your human resource development. We are saying that we will put considerable resources into human resource development. And we will do it in a way that all the people of Ghana will benefit. Now, you're aware that we spoke about our rent to own program. The positive of that rent to own program is we have a situation in the country where a lot of people cannot afford a mortgage. Now, we have an obligation to ensure that our people be housed. So what we are saying is that as a government, we are going to build houses for the people of Ghana. They will move into those houses, pay rent, and that rent will go towards payment for the house. Of course, during the process, they will have to maintain the house and so on. But that rent will go towards the payment for the house. And when that rent covers the cost of the house will become that person. What that means almost immediately is that people who have income that cannot meet the standards for the mortgage in a commercial bank will be able to have access housing. We also believe that there will still be a population that cannot get houses right away, even with this program. So we will complement that with rent assistance in a structured way. One of the things you must note about this government is that they don't want to do things, even the cash grants they are given and so. It is not a case where it's going into a bank account or it's in a structured way so that there could be a paper trail for it to be audited. It is them running around with these big thing of money, gone distribute, and then there is no proper paper trail. So that's another source of corruption. In our case, we will have by subsidizing electricity, by subsidizing water. And remember that the law says, the Constitution of Guyana says, health care must be free. We are going to ensure that health care is free. We believe that there's a place for private hospitals, etc. Our intention is not to get rid of private hospitals, but we have an obligation to ensure that our people can access quality health care. Our first task is to put a proper primary health care system in place. The government talking about building five specialty hospitals. But why do you need a specialty hospital if you don't first of all train the specialists to put in them? We have to look at the Guyana economy, look at its needs, look at our social sector, look at its needs, and produce the plan to train people to satisfy those institutions. In healthcare, we have a situation where millions of dollars are budgeted for drugs in hospitals, etc. And we know that many of those medical centers, hospitals don't have the drugs. And then the people are sent to PPP private friends with pharmacies, etc., to purchase the drugs that taxpayers pay for. We have to rectify that. We have to ensure that one, the drugs are there, and two, we improve the quality of primary health care. And we also have to, as it relates to the interior, the hinterland, not only develop the hospitals in the key areas, but you have to develop a proper Medivac program. You're never going to be able to put hospitals that can give the best services in all of the interior. But if you have your key centers and you develop a proper Medivac system, so that when something happens, say in Kaikumbi, and that person has to get to Letem, while we don't have the roads that they could drive in a peaceful way, we should be spending some resources on putting in place an efficient Medivac operation that allows the people to be able in very quick time to get from where they are to the central places that we have our medical thing. I anticipate that now that I say this, I can read in the next budget that there is an interior Medivac system. Of course, what they might do, knowing them, they might try to get their friends to do it so that the money go into the hands of the friends, you know. But what we need is a genuine approach to the development of the people of Guyana. We have also said in this program that it is our intention to focus on education. I saw the president talking nonsense about extending the hours that they teach children. The problem is not solely the hours. There are a number of problems to be addressed in education. The first one, I think, is a proper primary system that allows our children to learn to read, write, count, reason, and comprehend by the time they make grade 3. So we need to put more resources and more teachers at that level and focus on giving them the training to deliver to those children so that at a very early age, they are literate. Our intention is to complement that with a nationwide early childhood education program. We did, while we were in government, some pilot projects across the country where we train young people and put them in early childhood centers to prepare our children for education, so that by the time they transition from early childhood to the nursery system, they have the base. The nursery then prepares the base so that by the time they arrive at the primary school, they are oriented towards education. Now, one of the big problems in the education system, as the government talks about universal education, is that there are children who are not going to school because they can't afford transportation. And that is why we have said we will implement a national schools transportation system to get children in the riverine areas to school, to get children in the coast by land, etc. to school. But we have to have a feeding program that provides our children with at least 2 nutritious meals, so that when they go to school in the morning, those who didn't get a meal at home can get a meal. And at lunchtime, they get a meal. The responsibility is going to be on the parents in the afternoon. But because of your other measures, the parents will have more income to give them a meal in the afternoon. Because you have to ensure that the poor parents are getting more from the system. Those are some of the things. I don't want to outline all because I know the government is going to run and do it. Just like how they inherited the SLEDS program from us, and they christened it and giving out the resources and going on like if it is their brainchild, they are masters at copying.
Besides which, we're entirely out of time now. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Norton, for making yourself available to join us on this program to clarify issues for the Guyanese public and to assure Guyana that 49% counts. Thank you very much for appearing on the program, sir.
Thanks very much for having me, and I hope to see you shortly and engage again.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been tuned to Nation Watch, a production of the People's National Congress Reform. I'm your host, Mervyn Williams. My guest has been Mr. Aubrey Norton, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the parliamentary opposition in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Thank you for joining and staying with us to the end. Until we meet again, God bless.
As Guyana sits on the economic and political crossroads, we speak to the nation's opinion leaders and decision makers to get their views on the challenges the country faces and the path it must take to achieve national development. Welcome to Nation Watch. Now here is your host Mervyn Williams, former member of the Guyana Parliament.